Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome back to another swing state analysis for 2016. I'm trying to wrap this series up as reasonably quickly as I can. That way I can talk about some other things like enthusiasm gaps and shifting demographic potentials, as well as a few other things for 2020. And maybe I can start working on some stuff for 2024. Stuff like that. Now, we're on to Pennsylvania, of course, and as you can see, there's a lot of red here, but it was a very narrow victory for Donald Trump because guess what? Population is not distributed equally between all the counties because that's just not how it works. For example, Philadelphia County has probably the most votes of any county in Pennsylvania and Philly is one of the largest cities in America, so that actually kind of makes sense. And the key to this state for both, the keys to this state are slightly different. The Keystone State, hilariously. They're slightly different. For example, what Donald Trump needs to do is he needs to focus on territory he gained 4 years ago, and or not just gained, but just won in 4 years ago, specifically in what's sometimes known as the Rural T or Pennsyltucky. Basically, this general area. That's where Donald Trump needs to focus. He does need to put some effort into trying to do somewhat reasonably well in these suburbs. He should put some resources into Allegheny and also this area up here. Joe Biden, on the other hand, his focus needs to be the suburbs of Philadelphia and trying to regain some advantage. Donald Trump can even try to put some resources into Center County. And here's what I mean by that, right? So if we look at Bucks County, right? Donald Trump only very narrowly lost this county in 2016. And if he can flip that and maintain his margins in the rural T, he should be... He should win He should win Pennsylvania relatively easily, right? And he's probably not going to compete in Montgomery or Chester. Certainly not Delaware County. There's Dauphine. Or I guess Dauphin. Or is that a different state? Anyway. Joe Biden, on the other hand, really needs to somehow do better than Clinton did in Philly, which I'm skeptical is even possible, okay? That's almost 600,000 votes, and truthfully speaking, Biden may need to be at 620,000 votes in Philadelphia in order to win Pennsylvania. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it's also a very tough lift. Clinton probably didn't max out Philly, but she came very close to maxing out Philadelphia. And you look at Allegheny, while Donald Trump is probably not going to flip the county, he can certainly do better than 39%. Almost 40. And the fact that Trump actually won Erie County is a bit of a shock. You'd certainly make the argument that he could even maybe consider, he could maybe expand his margin here, but there's a lot of Obama-Trump voters there who may not be inclined to vote for him a second time around. Center County, that was another very close county. I think like 2,000 votes. A little bit less than that. Allegheny, again, like I said, probably not flippable, but certainly, it can become more competitive. A few of these counties were actually kind of a shock because I think Obama actually won those in 2012. And as you can actually see, the margins for most of the state went significantly towards the Donald and the Republicans compared to 2016, compared to 2012. And here you can just look at the margins. But if Donald Trump can compete in, say, Lehigh County, Bucks County, not hemorrhage vote in Philly, this is a surprisingly good opportunity for a pickup or not a pickup, but a hold for the Donald. And remember, I think a lot of people said that if Donald Trump wants to win in Pennsylvania, he would have had to win Bucks County. But he obviously won in the state, and he did not carry Bucks. And part of that is because he ran up the margins to obscene amounts in a lot of rural and Appalachian Pennsylvania. So, can he do it again? I would say yes. Rural people, at least in my experience, haven't abandoned Donald Trump. They're just, they just haven't. Suburban voters have probably soured on him more than they had in 2016. But the question is, does Biden have the ability to drive turnout more than Clinton did? And I'm skeptical of that. Clinton had better enthusiasm numbers, at least according to most polls that are being published, which is a little shocking because Biden is supposedly a lot more likable than Hillary Clinton ever was. Biden connects himself very well to Barack Obama, who is still relatively popular, at least in terms of the data, and it's going to be an interesting state. According to my model and the polling average that I'm using, Biden does hold about a 4% lead in Pennsylvania, according to the average of polls that I have. My model shows it being a little bit more in favor of Biden when I put in all the fundamentals and all that nonsense. And I'm just using nonsense as a catch-all word for everything else that I factor in, such as the economic factor, Trump's national approval rating, so on and so forth, state partisanship. You get the picture. So this is definitely a state to watch. If Donald Trump carries this state, I think it's pretty much over, but we're not going to know the result until probably 11, 12 at night, maybe into the morning, depending on how close it is. And here's the thing to note about Pennsylvania and how the votes get counted. Biden is going to start off with a massive, massive lead in terms of the percentages because Philly and the suburbs are going to count first. And then slowly the margin is going to get closer and closer and closer to the point, and I think we saw this in 2016. If Donald Trump takes the lead in Pennsylvania, that's it. He's won the state. Okay? Because by the time Donald Trump would hypothetically take a lead in Pennsylvania, all the votes been counted out of Philly. All the votes been counted out of the Philly burbs. And now you've just got votes from the ruralty, Erie, and Pittsburgh, or Allegheny County. And you're not going to have a lot of Democratic voters in those areas, except for, again, Allegheny County and Erie County. Center as well. So Biden better hope that his margins in Philly and the Philly burbs are enough to carry the state. If they aren't, it's going to be a very long night for the Biden campaign. And again, it basically comes down to, can Donald Trump hold reasonably similar margins in the Philly suburbs and improve in the ruralty as well as a few other highlight areas, and maybe improve in, say, Bucks? If the election were today, I'd say that's doubtful, simply because at the end of the day, the pandemic is kind of ruining everything. But here's the thing. If we go over here to my model and we look at national polls, by the way, I've finally collapsed everything down to quarter one and quarter two. And this is just to give more emphasis to current polling, right? Because I use a rolling average. This is basically where Biden is held station at, is about 48% nationally. Donald Trump was, in the first quarter of this year, up to about 43%. Quarter two, he fell about 2%. Biden maybe gained a full percent. And then Donald Trump fell another 2%, from the quarter. He's this is the most recent week of polling, most recent complete week of polling. But Biden's only gained, actually, he's lost a little bit from his second quarter. So Biden's not really gaining ground in polls, it's just Trump is losing ground. And that indicates to me that a lot of maybe Trump or reluctant Trump voters are just saying, yeah, I'm undecided, when really they're probably still going to vote for Donald Trump. They are just not inclined to say that they are right now because we've had an extended bad news cycle for Trump since about March. And that's a long time for a bad news cycle to go, but it's a really unique one because you would expect Biden to, of course, having a decent media cycle for him, you would expect him to see some gain in his polling average. Yet, we're not seeing that. And again, maybe I'm hyping the enthusiasm gap a little bit too much, but I think it does actually matter because enthusiasm breeds turnout, and you need that enthusiasm. So, well, I definitely say that Biden has an advantage given the current polling environment and the current news cycle that's been going on for a while now. Reality is that Biden needs to play his cards perfectly. Because if he doesn't grab more of those voters, and by the way, don't point to one or two polls showing Biden having gained over that average. Remember, I'm using an average. So, if you're going to say that Biden has gained, at least use two polls from, say, one from February and one from now from the same pollster to say that, yes, Biden has gained. Then there's a little bit of credence. But most polls are showing that, yeah, Biden has maybe gained 1%, but Trump has lost 5, 6, anywhere between 4 and 6% of his support. So it's kind of asymmetric. And that leads me to believe that Donald Trump's voters are still with him. They're just less likely to say that they're still with him right now. Of course, this could be me misreading the polls, and that is, number one, very possible. Number two, not a sign that I'm doing things wrong. Given the information I have, I think it's a reasonable conclusion to make. And number three, I think it's fair or even right to say that this asymmetric difference in the change of polling numbers isn't as bad a sign for the Donald Trump campaign as possible, especially when you look at the crosstabs and you see Donald Trump adding significantly, at least for Republicans significantly, amongst Latino voters with Latino voters and with younger voters, and even younger black male voters who are somewhat more supportive of Donald Trump than you might expect for their demographic. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I'd again want to make sure that it is perfectly understood that as of today, yes, Biden does have an advantage, and it's been that way since March, middle of March, but we've still got 4 months till the election. We still have both conventions. We still have 3 debates. And I actually don't think Biden's going to perform very well. I suspect his campaign will try to do something similar to the Clinton campaign and say we're going to run a live fact checker while the debate is happening to prove how false all of Donald Trump's claims are in the debates. But number one, the only people who are going to be watching that are Biden supporters, because Trump supporters, if they do take a look at that, they're just going to laugh and use it as comic relief. And independents, they may look at it, they may not, but the majority of them are probably not going to, because, well, they want to go to sleep so they can go to work tomorrow. They're definitely not going to look at it while the debate is happening live. And I just don't see it being an effective strategy, especially when it matters much more what the candidates say. And Trump isn't exactly like the Democrats Biden has had to debate against in the past, and he's certainly not a Paul Ryan or a Sarah Palin when it comes to debating. Trump is actually somewhat good at debating, even if it seems clumsy. He's able to fire up his base and score some really weird points that just don't make sense if you don't understand the internet or how information is communicated. People don't like long, broken up strings of information, which makes my video style seem a little bit strange, because I like to go in depth, I like to talk in depth, but people want the horse race. People really do want a simpler, shorter, more clickbaity format than what I think Biden might get suckered into. Because Biden's going to try and refute every single claim, and he's going to go way into the weeds. He's going to seem ponderous and tedious and just ineffective at countering whatever Donald Trump decides to send out of his mouth. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. Again, I could be wrong. Biden could handle this extremely well. Obviously, that he's going to get some grade A debate prep, but to me, the Democratic Party seems kind of like Ferrari's F1 team, or, I guess the Cleveland Browns. They get opportunity after opportunity thrown at them, yet they find amazing ways to choke. and they kind of outdo themselves in terms of their ability to choke. So that's kind of my take on what's happening right now, my look at Pennsylvania, and my understanding of communication and the future. And by the way, with polling numbers, I do expect some level of regression towards mean. Mean, not, mean. And that's just, the numbers returning somewhat to their historic average within this campaign. So, anyway, I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you all enjoy. Likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I greatly appreciate them. And I hope you all have a nice day. Take it easy. Bye-bye.